Happy Memorial Day. You know, as a marketer, I get to see it all, I get to hear it all. And Happy Memorial Day is something that I hear time and time again. And I'll tell you how that happened, how that came to be. So in businesses all across the country, in April, their marketing agency or advertising agency of record gets together with their executive team, and the conversation goes a little something like this. You have a guy walk in from the agency and he's wearing a $1,500 three-piece suit, and he says, listen, we've got a plan for May that's gonna kill it for you guys for sales. Now, we've done a lot of test studies on this, we've done a lot of forums and focus groups, and what we came up with is that this year we're gonna simplify the message to sell more refrigerators or appliances or whatever it may be. So the first message that we came up with really resonated with the younger demographic of 18 to 35 years old. And that message is very simple. It's Happy Memorial Day, along with, of course, the sale that you guys are going to put out there. And, you know, they'll have a little back and forth on that. And then he says, but the second message, the second one, we think this one's going to really perform because we did a whole big focus group and we found that this message and this tone and this inflection is going to really resonate with the 45 to 75-year-old demographic, which is Happy Memorial Day. Because, you know, it's got that youthfulness and that energy and that excitement, but it also has a little bit of somberness. And we think that with the right discount, we're going to be able to move a lot of your product. But, you know, keep in mind, too, that it's 75-year-old demographic is moving into assisted living facilities, and they don't really need the refrigerators as much because they're already going to be in there. So we think that we should go with the third message, because this is the message that really, you know, it killed it with our focus group of our 4 interns. And that message is Happy Memorial Day, because we want a seriousness to it. Now, of course, as we go through these TV and radio commercials, that's not what's going to translate to print. So we have a special message for our print ads. On the left-hand side of the newspaper, it's going to say Happy Memorial Day. Then we're going to have new and used cars. Of course, we've got the specials. And then on the right side, it's going to say, ready for this? Never forget. That's how we're going to kill it this year for the 4-day Memorial Day sales event. Happy Memorial Day. Never forget. We have forgotten. We have forgotten what Memorial Day is all about. A couple of years ago, in Iraq, a helicopter went down with a bunch of Marines on board. Most of those Marines were killed. There was one young woman who lost her leg. Who's it a Happy Memorial Day for? Is it for those Marines who are no longer with us? Is it for their parents who received that flag? Happy Memorial Day. Is it for the wife of one of those Marines who had 3 kids and was 8 months pregnant with her 4th? Happy Memorial Day. Is it a Happy Memorial Day for the 2-year-old girl who lost her dad, who's never going to get to go to a father-daughter dance? Happy Memorial Day. What about that young Marine who lost her leg, who made a sacrifice of limb to our country? She wanted to go on after and move into law enforcement and one day be blessed with a husband and kids. She may have that husband. She's not going to have a career in law enforcement. She's not going to be able to have children now. Is it a Happy Memorial Day for that young lady because she gets $500 off a car for 4 days once a year? We have forgotten, and yet we have such a large group of Americans that recognizes and pays tribute still. Now, how many of you in this room are veterans? Show of hands, please. How many of you here on a regular basis thank you for your service? And how many of you often say or think to yourself, don't thank me for my service. This was my job. This is what I signed up for. This is what I did. I hear that from friends all the time. I think that we need to change the narrative. And I think what we should be saying is, thank you for being willing to make the sacrifice that so few Americans are willing to make. Thank you for being willing to put our country before yourself, before your family, before everything else. And I think that we need to pay tribute to those families. As you pointed out, these families didn't get a vote in it. When my little brother came home when he was 17 years old and he said, I'm going into the Coast Guard, we didn't get a vote. Families across the country never got a vote in that. And yet those families are the ones who will stand by their sides, who will pick up those pieces when they come home, who will hold down the fort, who will go to battle in the communities and in their state and at the federal level to get the support and the resources for our troops that they need. And yet, war and the military have become so intertwined and interconnected that we lose the focus of paying tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice, who paid the ultimate price, or who continue to fight all of the time. Guys, you've all heard the number, right? 22 a day. 22 veteran suicides a day. And here's what's really scary. Right now, when I just said that number, there were some of you in this room who thought, the number's not actually 22 a day anymore. There are more services and resources and support. We hear about it. That number is actually closer to 20.57. And then there are others who thought, well, the VA is miscalculating these numbers. It's actually 28 or 29 today. And these debates happen whenever you mention 22 a day. We are arguing over a statistical analysis. This is the challenge that we face in society today, which is that we are quantifying numbers because it's easy to look at a number, and it's not easy to look at the value of a human life. I would say to you today that one a day, that one a year is too many. Because on Memorial Day, we tend to think about the men and women who lost their lives overseas, and we forget about the men and women that survived those battles, came home with wounds that we will never be able to see, and then lost the battles right here in their living rooms, in their car, at the office, and then lost the battle to the demons that they brought home from overseas. And so when we think about that number, we need to think about the people behind that number and what that number actually means. Never forget. I have a good friend of mine who we were in a coffee shop recently, and he had a total meltdown. He came home from overseas. While he spent his time over there in the Marines, he saw the worst of the worst. It wasn't a good experience. There were good moments for him, but he was, a good day was, hey, I got to eat some reconstituted eggs for chow instead of having to bang a protein bar in the, while on the road. That was a good day for him. He saw families in these war-torn countries that had nothing. They barely had each other. They were living in mud huts. And then he got in line at the coffee shop, and the woman in front of him was complaining because the coffee shop was out of soy milk and could only offer almond milk. I mean, talk about first world problems. We've lost context. We've lost appreciation. And yet we have a hard time understanding why so many of our heroes who were over there have a hard time reacclimating to society. We look and say, but you're back, right? You're not in war anymore. You're not over there having to sleep on the dirt in a bag. You're back home in your bed. And we don't understand why these men and women who've made so many sacrifices struggle so greatly with having to come and reacclimate into a society that doesn't get it. And guys, for those of us who are not veterans, we're not supposed to get it. We're supposed to appreciate it. We're supposed to respect it. We're supposed to pay tribute to them, but we have to understand why it's so difficult for so many to reacclimate into society. And we need to be there so that they don't become part of those statistics, so that they don't become part of those numbers. A good friend of mine is, I want to talk about Sal in a second, but Sal is a very, very well-spoken young man, former SEAL, medically retired. Sal made a great point. He said, we have the greatest military in the world, right? We can go in and we can save countries. We can save people. We can overthrow governments, yet we can't take care of our own. We as a community need to come together to fix that. Veterans and family and friends need to come together to fix that. So Sal was injured, medically retired. He now owns a company up in Haverhill, Mass. called Battlegrounds Coffee with his wife. They're opening up their third location. Great dude, you guys should check him out. We brought Sal out, and Sal was filming an episode of The Real Man Show with us, not to be confused with Jimmy Kimmel before he sort of went off the deep end, that man show. This is a Real Man Show. It's about honor and integrity and doing the right thing. So we were filming at a company called Survival Systems USA, and it was underwater escape training. And I hate water. I mean, the only time I like being in water is in the shower or the hot tub, and I need to have a beer in my hand for at least one, sometimes both of those, depending on the day. So I'm not a big fan of water. I'm also not a big fan of the idea that I'm going to drown. And everybody likes the challenge of trying to drown me, hence us filming at Survival Systems. So for the last part of this underwater training, we were going to be strapped into what seemed to be the fuselage or a helicopter, and dunked into a pool, sunk down 18 feet, flipped upside down, no oxygen, and we have to figure out how to escape. Some of you have probably been through similar training in the service. So we're getting ready to do this, and we did some test runs on it, and I'm going into like major panic mode, because growing up, I was the fat kid, and kids used to try and drown me because I was a fat kid. So I'm having these like Freudian flashbacks, going to that dark place. And he looks at me, and he's like a fish in water, right? Because he's a SEAL. So he said, "What are you so nervous about?" I said, "Man, I'm gonna be honest with you. I keep having this horrible reoccurring image since we got here, that I'm in the car, I'm with my wife and our 1 and 3-year-old kids, and we go off a bridge and flip upside down, and we're sinking." Like, this is how dark it got. It was pretty scary. And we're sinking. I said, "Who do you save?" He goes, "What do you mean, who do you save?" I said, "There's one of me, 3 of them." And he goes, "Bro, you don't choose. You save them all." These are the men and women who serve and protect our communities and our country. It's binary to them. It's black and white. There's no like, maybe I could pick one. It's you save everybody or you die trying. This is part of who they are. And that's also part of the challenge that our veterans face when they're coming home from these war-torn countries, because many of you who are veterans can probably attest to this. You're taught that if you're asking for help, you're putting something on somebody else, and you're supposed to be taking something off of them and always helping your brothers and sisters along. And yet many guys and women come back and they struggle because not just reacclimating to where we are in society today, but because they don't have that mission anymore. It was very simple in the military. You were given a mission, you were told where to go, what to do, and that's it. And the mission today has to be each other. It has to be helping, reaching out that hand and pulling others forward, but understanding that if you don't ask for that help, your brothers and sisters are going to hurt as well. You've got guys like Mike Monaco, who's a good friend of mine, did a couple tours overseas, came back, was having a hard time, ended up he and his sister run an automotive dealership together, a Ford dealership, and Mike came back and said, "There's not enough support for my brothers and sisters who are coming back." So he took his great uncle's Marine detachment that he had started after the Korean War, and he resurrected the detachment, and he said, "This is only for the Marines though. What about the other men and women? What about the guys in the Air Force and the Army?" So he opened it up to all branches of the military. You've all seen what's happening to our service organizations, to the VFW, Elks, Kiwanis, all of these nonprofit organizations that are part of the fabric of society, that are having a fundamental impact on our country. But these organizations are dying off, literally, because the members of these organizations are much older. So Mike came back and said, "I'm not going to let that happen." They expanded the Marine detachment. There are now over 150 members. Last weekend, I was part of their event where they had almost 300 hikers hiking a 22K in honor of the men and women who lost to those demons back here at home. You've got a guy, Eli Crane, who you could see in some of our stuff. Eli, retired Navy SEAL sniper, came back home, said, "How am I going to provide for my family? I know missions. I know how to go after bad guys, how to protect our country. How do I provide for my family?" Started a company called Bottle Breacher. Probably saw him on Shark Tank. Turns 50 cal bullets into bottle openers, frag grenades into bottle openers. An organization, though, that outside of their product donates a tremendous amount of money and products and support and resources and services to fellow brothers and sisters. And so when we think about Memorial Day, guys, I don't want you to just think about it as being a sales event. I know you guys don't, but this is the paradigm shift that we need in society. It's not about a sales event. And it's not just for the men and women who have died. It's for the men and women who are going to pay that price, who are going to make that ultimate sacrifice. I want you guys to help me with something. Can all of the veterans in the room please stand and stay standing? Can anyone in this room who has a member of their family that is a veteran also please stand and stay standing? Can anyone in this room who works with a veteran or has a veteran as a friend, please stand and stay standing. Guys, look around. I don't see black and white. I don't see Christian, Jew, atheist, Muslim. I don't see Democrat, Republican, conservative, liberal. I see a room full of Americans. I see a room full of people who, in difficult times and times of need, will always come together to stand by each other's side. Will always fight for each other, even though you don't know each other. And so, guys, today I want to leave you with an old Irish blessing that was very close to us growing up. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warmly upon your face and the dew fall gently upon your heel. And until we meet again, may the Lord keep each and every one of you safe and sound. Guys, never forget. Thank you, and God bless America.